You've made it to Neuschwanstein Castle, one of the most, if not the most beautiful castles in the world. The construction of this breathtaking castle began in the summer of 1868, when up to 8 meters of stone were outcropped to make way for the foundation of the castle. In June the next year, the new access road, which would enable the transportation of material to the new site, were completed. On September 5th, the very same year, the foundation stone was laid and the real construction had begun. Despite its medieval looks, the latest building techniques, materials and innovations were used in the construction of the castle. The foundations were cemented and the walls were built of brick with light-colored limestone used merely as cladding. As you can probably imagine, building a castle on a place such as this is quite hard. Despite the modern building techniques, the construction process was difficult and complicated. Even though it was built rather quickly compared to other castles, it was not built as rapidly as the founder of the castle, Ludwig II, had hoped. The castle consists of the gatehouse, which you pass through as you enter, the knight's house with a square tower to the right, and a citadel in front of the courtyard. The first building which was completed was the Gateway building in 1872. This building was used as a provisional living quarter for Ludwig II when he visited the site, until the main citadel had been built. The construction of the citadel started in 1872 and finished 12 years later in 1884, though without the final details completed. By that time, Ludwig moved into the citadel and lived there permanently. The whole castle as such stood ready in 1892, which totals a construction time of 24 years. The effect of this white fairy tale castle with its beautiful location is simply amazing. Unfortunately, the man who dedicated his life and a fortune to the project, Ludwig II, never got to see the castle completed, as he died in 1886. So, who was the man who had such a masterpiece of a castle constructed, and what were his motives? The story behind Ludwig II is almost as intriguing and romanticized as the castle itself. Ludwig was the oldest son of Crown Prince Maximilian II of Bavaria. He lived a typical life of a young royal, with a strict regimen of study and exercise, and rather harsh relations to his father and mother. Ludwig spent much of his time at Castle Hohenschwangau, the former ruined castle of Schwanstein, which his father had rebuilt in a Gothic style. Hohenschwangau means, in a strict translation, the upper land of the swans, and the castle was decorated with scenes from medieval legends and poetry, including the legend of the swan knight Lohengrin. The swan was also the heraldic animal of the Knights of Schwangau, whose successor Maximilian II considered himself to be. Ludwig had already as a child vivid imagination, and he identified himself with Lohengrin, both as a real swan knight and as the fictitious King Lohengrin. The young Ludwig was also influenced by the romantic mountain scenery, and the castle became one of his favorite places to stay. It was a place for him to escape the strict and limited reality. Ludwig soon became an admirer of Richard Wagner, a German composer and theater director. Wagner had a very classic and romantic way of doing operas. Ludwig was introduced to Wagner's Lohengrin on February 2nd of 1861 in the Munich Court Opera House, and he was captivated. At the age of 18, Ludwig became Ludwig II as he took over his father's throne, who had died after a 3-day illness. At that time, one of the very first orders he gave was to summon Richard Wagner to his court. There, Ludwig II rescued the composer from a financial crisis, which later helped him to create new operas. Soon after the death of his father, Ludwig II suffered a severe personal blow, as the region of Bavaria was allied with Austria, who in 1866 lost the war against the expanding Prussia. Bavaria was forced into an alliance with Prussia, which removed Ludwig's right to dispose over his own army in case of war. This meant that Ludwig II no longer was the sovereign ruler, simply a vassal of the Prussian ruler. 1 year later, he began planning for a kingdom and a castle of his own, where he could be the real king once again. This castle would be named Neuschwanstein Castle, and would be a better recreation of the ideal medieval castle compared to his father's. Perfection was the key, with a mixture of original style and modern technical features. The main architecture of the castle was drawn, not by a professional architect, but by the theatrical set designer Christian Jank. The further shows how fascinated Ludwig II was by sagas and fantasies, and what his motivation for the castles were. Throughout the castle, its design pays homage to the German legend of Lohengrin, the Swan Knight. As the construction of the castle progressed, Ludwig alienated himself from people and spent more and more time in the mountains and less time in Munich, as he drifted into a fantasy world. Ludwig II increasingly identified himself with Percival, a legendary medieval figure who became the Grail King through his purity and faith. Ludwig was so intrigued that he asked Wagner to write an opera about it, which he did in 1877. Wagner and his circle privately even referred to Ludwig as Percival, and his problems were incorporated into the drama of the Grail. The opera was then played exclusively several times for Ludwig. During this stage, Ludwig started to resign many of the castle rooms. For example, the writing room was changed into a small grotto. The modest audience room became a huge throne room. The room was no longer intended for giving audiences, but was built as a monument to kinship and a copy of the legendary Grail Hall. A massive knight's keep was planned for the middle of the upper courtyard, but was never built. Only the foundation for the keep, which is still visible. However, Ludwig's behavior was not in the long run compatible with his duties as head of state. Reality came knocking on Ludwig's door in 1885 as foreign banks threatened to seize his property due to his overwhelming debts. The construction of the castle had cost him a fortune. When Ludwig refused to react rationally, he was declared insane by the government and interned in Berg Palace. The next day he was found drowned under mysterious circumstances in Lake Starnberg, together with a psychiatrist who had certified him insane. After Ludwig's death, the castle and all its glory was open to the public. The castle was also renamed from Neuschwanstein Castle to its current name, Neuschwanstein Castle, meaning New Swan of Stone Castle. Even though photography is forbidden inside the castle, it is the most photographed building in Germany, and it is visited by around 1.3 million people each year. If it feels like you've seen this castle before, it might be because it has appeared in several movies, and it is the inspiration for the Sleeping Beauty castle in Disneyland. Ludwig once said, "I want to remain an eternal mystery to myself and others." It is certainly what he has become, and his mysterious elements still fascinate people today. Even though Ludwig II passed away, the story of his life and his masterpiece work in form of Neuschwanstein Castle will live on a long, long time.